All right, sorry, this was a 4-page letter. It's taking me a long time to get through. I think part 3 will be the last that I need, though, to get through Shannon's bullshit, this master class in gaslighting and manipulation. I wouldn't have even thought for a moment to have been upset at anything like that, referring to how we're upset that they stole our photographer out of our reception during our wedding reception. But she's not upset that we had photos done together at her wedding and reception, even though we did them at the photo booth at her wedding and when the photographer was specifically doing couple photos with the bride and groom. Like, we never went and made a secret plan to go have private photos done while the photographer was working. That's what they did to us, but they don't want to acknowledge it. And as far as telling you we couldn't do pictures, I'm sure I didn't tell you that we couldn't get pictures on the grounds and that you could only do pictures in front of the rainbow curtain, which is referring to her reception where my husband said, hey, we got here on time. We couldn't find where the pictures were. Whenever you have a free minute, could we take a few with you on the grounds? And his brother David said yes. And Shannon walked up with her bitchy Shannon face and sneered and went, no, they can take pictures at the rainbow backdrop. And yes, it happened. It was said to my husband, but I was standing right there. I am a witness. It absolutely happened. It's possible that in the moment of everything going on, guests arriving, DJs, and catering asking questions, all that was long since gone. Like, the reception had already started at this point. And everything else, that something was misunderstood. You know what it's like when everyone you love is in the same building. It's overwhelming and hard to handle everything coming at you. I promise you I wouldn't have excluded you from any of this, except you did. And you did it verbally. And we both heard you, so you're not going to gaslight us into saying it didn't happen. During the time that you were having photos in the garden at your own reception, Will was having a meltdown, which is like their 22-year-old son. He might be 21, I might be a little off in the age, but he's legal to drink. You can ask him if you want. He's brought it up several times since then and feels genuinely bad about it. But funny that he's never texted his uncle to say anything about it, like, hey, sorry that I threw a fit at your wedding. When we got there, it was difficult to hear any announcements in that reception hall. And when we finally caught on that people were outside taking photos, Will had already begun the breakdown. He shouted, don't hit me, at Alari, which is like his 23, 24-year-old daughter, David's 23, 24-year-old daughter, who found out later that who we found out later told Will not to touch them when Will had tried to give Alari a hug. Okay, again, these are kids in their 20s. These are fucking adults, and they're describing a story that sounds like a 7 and an 8-year-old had an argument. At that point, David took Will outside to avoid any additional disruptions to your guests. He spent some time outside with him, trying to get him to calm down. Then they came back inside, where Will proceeded to crouch into a ball right inside the door where your guests were coming inside. This is why we said, don't bring Will. This is why we said to Shannon directly, if this isn't Will's cup of tea, don't bring him, because family gatherings shouldn't be a punishment for an autistic person. It's just, they caused this problem, and now they're acting like it's Will's fault. There was no way people weren't looking at him. Again, that's your fault for bringing him. I saw that he was just going to stay there, and so I took him outside and sat with him on the bench. We talked and he ended up literally crying in my lap. I was out on that bench consoling him until you all returned. How is that our fault? And how is it that you couldn't communicate any of that or take 5 minutes to show up for pictures? You know, Will having a meltdown, people are looking at him regardless. And you didn't have a problem coming inside later, so fuck you, you're lying. At which point I asked Will if he was ready to come back in. He said he wasn't, so I asked if he would be okay if I went back inside, as we were there to help the two of you celebrate. I told him this. Again, shouldn't have been there. He said, okay, and I moved him to a bench that wasn't directly in the sun because he's an animal in a cage that can't move himself. Again, 20-something-year-old, he is perfectly capable of cleaning himself. He can move benches if he wants to. So this is what was happening while you and McGann thought we were refusing to take photos with you. Yeah, a bullshit story. Again, Stephen, you know me. I would have never done something to disrespect you like that, but you did it, and you're literally recounting the details of it right now. There were witnesses to the whole situation. I made a few new friends while we were there because of it. And yes, you did say Will didn't have to come if he didn't want to, but he wanted to come. There was no way we could have planned for this, except he does this at every event, and yes, you could have, and yes, you could have chosen not to bring him because he doesn't do well. I don't believe for a minute that Will wanted to come, because Will has not said shit about wanting to be there before, since, or after. Now, here's what I find funny. To address stealing your photographer, I meant zero disrespect, so you admit that you did it. When I learned that all of my household besides me would be wearing blue shirts to the wedding, and that the 3 generations would be at the same place for the first time in years, and who knows when the next time would be, I suggested that your dad wear a blue shirt, and maybe we could see if photographer's name, our mutual friend, who also photographed our wedding, might have some time to take photos. But you couldn't wait until after our reception was done. That's the key fucking moment there. You had to take her out of the reception right as we're about to cut the cake. And again, she's not your friend. She was your employee for your wedding and reception. And she doesn't even like you guys. Like, it's so funny that they keep wanting to dance on this. Well, she was a mutual friend. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. That was it. I legit thought our mutual friend might have a chance to take a photo. Also, can we go back and say how she's saying, oh, 3 generations are going to be here for one photo, but you don't want the only other member of that direct family, which would be my husband or his new wife or their children? Like, really? But okay, yeah, let's play that game. Oh, never in a million years would I have purposefully disrespected the two of you for any reason if I thought that there was even a remote chance that I would have offended anyone. I would never have suggested it, but you did, and you suggested it, and you went through with it, and you didn't check with us. Just because it may not have bothered you if we did it, which again, we didn't. It was a totally different context where we were taking pictures at your reception, not taking the photographer out of your reception. But even if it would have been okay with you, that doesn't mean it would have been okay with us. We had people there from all over the country, not just you and your out-of-town stepdaughter. I don't know what went down as far as continuously asking Sage, but I would imagine maybe one person asked, then another, not knowing she had already been asked. I'm sure no one meant to steal her away, but you did it. And again, she said she felt pretty much harassed into doing it, that you guys wouldn't stop asking her. And it was completely inappropriate to start asking her in the first place. At one point, one of your aunts said she would take the photo with our phone, and I suggested we do that, but someone said the photographer already said she would do it. But then go take it with the family. It's funny how they made all these friends at our reception, and they had all these relatives there and all these people that were willing to help them out, but none of them could be used because they wanted to wait for my photographer. As for not engaging with Archer, which is my 8-year-old autistic son, okay, this is really pulling at straws here. They exclude him all the time. They don't want to invite him to things. They don't want him around. But we're supposed to want 21-year-old autistic Will around. Unless you had your eyes on us the entire time, there's no way you could have seen any interactions with us. When Archer got there, I did engage with him. I told him I liked his outfit and asked how he was before realizing that maybe he didn't remember who I was because you don't interact with him. So I asked him if he remembered coming to my house and eating Oreos. He said he did, and then went about playing his game. I certainly didn't want to make him uncomfortable, so I didn't try to force him into any more communication. No, I didn't sit at the seat the whole time. You didn't sit at the seat at all. From what I saw, y'all ditched to a middle table where I couldn't come to you with my poofy dress. I was visiting family, making new friends. Oh, and yeah, I did get up to leave the table after hearing the bride's ex make a comment about the bride's, quote, taste in men at the wedding of the bride in front of his girlfriend. That dude was the reason I didn't want to sit there for long. Funny, that seems like exactly the kind of thing that you would text the bride and be like, oh my gosh, I see what you mean about your ex now. Doesn't that seem, if you're friends with the bride and you're on good terms with her and you're not freezing her out, doesn't that seem like something you might say of like, hey, yeah, your ex-husband like really sucks. I get it now. I would, but, you know, I'm not a two-faced bitch. Look, I know David messaged you in the heat of the moment after watching the video with me, so you showed him the video. You started the problem in that regard. We shouldn't have reached out while we were upset. I'm sorry for any heated comments made during that time, but no one's apologizing for what was said to or about me, by the way. I really do wish you had come to us with your concerns when you had them, instead of letting them get tangled up in a big ball of anger and resentment. I understand that you were upset about some things that you think happened, but I hope that you're able to understand our side of things and that we would never mean to do anything to hurt you or your relationship with McGann. So much manipulation, so much gaslighting, so much fucking bullshit. Like you can probably still see, I'm still shaking. This letter pisses me off so much. She is fake. She is two-faced. She is taking pieces of truth